Hello again, and welcome to our Model Year 2000 Outboard Product Update program. We're going to be showing you running changes for 1999 models as well as updates for Model Year 2000 products. This information, by the way, is the most current information available at this time. So we're going to begin now with some of the new products. First up in new products is this 6 horsepower 4-stroke. Now this engine is a modified version of the 4 and 5 horsepower 4-stroke models that were introduced last year. The main differences between the 4 and 5 in this 6 horse are the dome on the 6 horse piston as well as the corresponding carburetor changes. The 40 horsepower 4-stroke is available this year in a new Bigfoot model. Special aluminum propellers that are designed to reduce clutch rattle must be used on this 40 Bigfoot. These silver gray aluminum props are rated to a maximum of 50 horsepower and can also be used on 50 horsepower Bigfoot models if needed. More information is available in Service Advisory 99-3. We also need to mention that several 4-stroke models may have some components or the entire power head painted either light green or gray instead of the usual black. You can certainly see that on this 40 horse. Models affected would include the 9.9, the 15, the 30, the 40, and 50 horsepower engines. Next up is a new 75 horsepower 4-stroke model as well as this 90 horsepower 4-stroke model. An important point to remember with both of these is that the oil pump is driven by the drive shaft. That means the engine cannot be run without that lower unit installed. And when installing the lower unit on these particular models, the oil pump splines must be aligned as well as those crankshaft splines. Another new model this year is the 115 horsepower OptiMax. This 115 is actually a detuned version of the proven 2.5 liter 135 and 150 horsepower models. The main differences on this 115 include the following: a smaller throttle shutter, a different throttle cam, and ECM calibration. With model year 2000, Mercury is also introducing new digital OptiMax engines. These engines are designed to work with the new smart gauges, which we will be talking about a bit later in this program. Digital engines have additional sensors, wiring harness connections, as well as hardware to communicate both engine and boat information to those smart gauges. Okay, now we're going to move on to some of the discontinued products. Model year 2000 means all Force products have been discontinued. This decision was driven by increasingly strict EPA regulations. Also discontinued this year are the 100 horsepower Mercury and Mariner models. These models were discontinued due to low sales volume. Now, since we only have a few running changes and updates for products other than V6s this year, let's look at the smaller engines first. Then we want to show you a sport jet upgrade, and then we're going to move on to the larger engines where we do have a lot of information for you. The first change we want to talk about affects the 6-horse 2-stroke model. 6-horse 2-stroke models now use the same carbureted idle speed screw as 8 through 15 horsepower models. And this additional screw allows for easy adjustment of idle speed. The previous carburetor will be superseded by the new carburetor, and the part numbers are shown on your screen. The next upgrade affects electric start models. Electric start models now use an inline barbed hose connector in place of the current fuel line connector. This new 4-inch long kink-resistant fuel line exits through a new grommet in the lower cowl. The engine end of the fuel tank line on these models now has an open end instead of a quick disconnect. And since both ends of the fuel line are now open, care must be taken to install the fuel line correctly. This arrow on the primer bulb must point toward the engine. That's the same direction as the fuel flow. Now, the next update affects 30 to 125 horsepower models. Well, the square fuel pump is common to many different engines, so do keep in mind that this information applies to all models that use this pump. The rubber check valves in the pump have now been replaced with new Mylar check valves. This upgrade was necessary because some of the new aggressive fuel additives were damaging these rubber valves. The Mylar material is not affected by these additives. The new check valves are installed using the same retainers but without these plastic discs that are used on the rubber valves. And the part number for the fuel pump repair kit with the Mylar valves is shown on your screen. Okay, the next two changes affect the 75 through 125 models. 4 additional stainless steel washers are now included in the parts assembly bags for these models. These washers are to be installed between the bolt head and nut and the transom brackets, and these will help prevent fretting of the bracket material. And the part numbers are shown on your screen. Another upgrade that will also occur shortly after the start of the model year is for the standard 75 through 125 gear case. This gear case is also used with other engines, so this information applies to those models as well. Now, the forward gear hub will be extended like this to provide room for the addition of a groove and metal retainer ring. The retainer ring will prevent the propeller shaft needle bearing from moving forward during hard operation. Now, this new service tool is required in order to set the needle bearing depth at 200 thousandths of an inch from the end of the hub. The shoulder of the tool that actually contacts the thin bearing shell is specially designed to prevent distortion of the shell during installation. The tool also has a spring-loaded plunger, you can see it here, that keeps the needles aligned in parallel with the shaft during installation. The part number of the tool is shown on your screen. Okay, the next upgrade does affect all models. Shortly after the start of production for the 2000 model year, the magnet was removed from the gear case drain screw here. This was done as a cost reduction and to prevent possible damage to the internal parts of the gear case, that is, if that magnet broke off of the drain screw. By the way, the new part number is shown on your screen. The following changes affect Mercury, Pleasure, and Mariner Marathon models, as well as the coastal and offshore models. We have a few decal changes to tell you about. The Mercury, Pleasure, and Mariner Marathon model decals, as you can see, have been changed to this newer style. And here's an example of the old decal you're probably familiar with. Also, the coastal and offshore models have been changed now to saltwater and now have this new decal. Next, we have an upgrade for sport jet models. And beginning with model year 2000, the 175 XR² will now use this same shift cable design as the 1999 and newer 120 XR² models. For more information on this upgrade, please refer to the 1999 Outboard product update video as well as the product update manual. Before we get started with our V6 segment, we should mention that 3 of the upgrades mentioned a little bit earlier in this program also apply to V6 models. Now, these would be the removal of the magnet from the gear case drain screw, the new Mylar check valves for those models using the square fuel pump, and then we have the stainless steel washers for the transom bolts. Okay, we want to begin our V6 upgrades with several changes that are common to all standard production V6s, the 135 through 250 horsepower models. These changes affect carbureted EFI and OptiMax products. First, we have several changes that will speed up rigging for dealers and OEMs. The remote oil tank pulse and supply connections, as well as the fuel inlet hose to the pulse fuel pump, now extend out of the bottom cowl. This allows the remote oil tank connections and the fuel supply connections to be made also out of the cowl. The water pressure gauge and speedometer hoses are also extended out of the bottom cowl. The black water pressure tubing is gray and the speedometer tubing here is black. These hoses will be capped or plugged if they're not being used. And at the connection, the hose is simply pushed in to lock it in place. To remove that hose, you need to push in on the connector and then pull on the hose. We also need to mention here that this same style connector is used at the speedometer connection in the gear case. Now, a new bottom cowl clamp with one large opening to provide more clearance is also new this year. The new clamp is a 2-piece design, as you can see, and it has a round extension or snout where a rigging tube can be attached. The previously used clamp had separate openings for hoses, for cables, and for harnesses. The rigging tube itself has also been upgraded. It now has more rounded corners, as you can see, and it's made of a softer material. That's all to protect the boat's gel coat. This new material is also more resistant to UV rays. The new part will supersede the old, and you can see it on your screen. The last update we have now that's common to these models is a trim limit kit for 3-ram power trim systems. Now this kit is intended for use on boats with very little or no bow lift. On these applications, the boat operator may just trim out too far, which could lead to an overheat condition. The kit consists of 10 of these aluminum spacers, each of which reduces the maximum trim angle by 2 degrees. To reduce trim angle, the spacers are installed in the port trim ram. But for appearance reasons, it is recommended that an equal number of spacers be installed in each of the trim rams. The part number for this kit is also shown on your screen. All right, now it's time to take a look at the product changes that are common to all OptiMax models. First is a new break-in procedure. This procedure is similar to the one introduced in Service Advisory 99-04. For the first hour of operation, allow the engine to warm up for 30 to 60 seconds. Avoid continuous operation at idle speed for more than 10 minutes. Now, the engine should be run between 3,000 and 4,500 RPM, about 3/4 throttle for the majority of the time. Engine RPM should be varied every 2 minutes. Short bursts of full throttle for up to 10 seconds are also acceptable. Also avoid trimming the engine out beyond a vertical trim position. This will help keep that engine under a load. Then, for the next 3 hours of operation, engine speed should be changed every 10 minutes. Now, for model year 2000, all OptiMax products will also use the new Guardian protection system. This system monitors critical engine sensors and will actively respond to reduce engine output power in order to maintain a safe operating condition. If a sensor indicates a possible problem, Guardian will reduce engine RPM even if the throttle is held wide open. And when the sensor reading does return to normal, full power will once again be available after the throttle is pulled back to a point lower than at what the power was limited to. Now, for more information on this system, refer to the Outboard 2000 Product Update Manual. These Omega SmartCraft gauges are also being offered this year for all OptiMax digital engines. The ECM on the digital engine receives information from normal engine sensors as well as from several additional sensors specific to the digital engine. These include the remote oil tank level sensor, a fuel tank level sensor, a paddle wheel speed sensor, and a lake water temperature sensor located in the paddle wheel bracket here, and a new 3-wire trim sensor and the speedometer pressure sensor are both mounted on the engine itself, and then mounted on the boat is an air temperature sensor. Now, all this data is then sent to the gauges where the operator can read the various information by simply pressing the mode button. The standard 4-function gauges are not used with the Smart Gauge package. So for more information on these gauges, be sure and refer to the appropriate service manual or the operations manual. Both the digital and analog engines have the necessary connectors built into the main engine harness. Kits are available to convert analog to digital and digital to analog, and the part numbers for those kits are shown presently on your screen. A new oil pump with several improved features is now being used on all OptiMax models. This new pump has one-piece construction and does not require a gasket. The oil inlet fitting is extended, as you can see, for easier installation of the stay strap. Also, all these cylinder outlet fittings are now the same size, and it has a new 2-pin connector, which is here. This new pump will not backfit any earlier models. The vapor separator tank and filter have also been improved on these models. The tank now has improved plating on the needle valve, the stainless steel needle spring, and the needle retainer screw. The water separating fuel filter also has tin aluminum zinc plating on its internal parts, and the plating on these parts will increase their resistance to corrosion. Okay, the oil reservoir switch has also been changed from a normally open switch to a normally closed switch. And the housing of the new normally closed switch is black to distinguish it from the previously used white normally open switch. This change was made to improve the warning system. If the switch harness was broken or it becomes disconnected, that warning would be activated. Now, prior to this, with a normally open switch, this type of fault would not have activated the warning system. There are also several sensor changes on OptiMax models this year. Now, the map sensor has been relocated from the ignition coil plate here to the top of the air plenum. The air temperature sensor has also been moved to the top of the air plenum, and it's been upgraded to incorporate a new thermodisc that will provide improved reaction time. The new air temperature sensor will not backfit, by the way, and the relocation of these two sensors is going to help prevent them from being damaged when removing and installing the top cowl. These protective brackets have also been added over the upper and lower fuel injectors, as you can see, to protect them from the same type of possible damage. Also beginning with model year 2000, all OptiMax engines will now use only one throttle position sensor, or TPS. Now, the input and output leads on the TPS have been reversed to allow for one of the sensors to be eliminated. If the single TPS fails, the ECM will default to the map sensor in order to determine throttle position. And the starter motor on these models now uses a rubber mount. This improvement reduces vibration to the starter and improves starter durability. This rubber mount will not backfit because of casting changes to the cylinder block. All OptiMax engines will also begin using new spark plugs. The new Champion plug incorporates a single gold palladium button on the center of the electrode. Also, the base material of the plug has also been designed for better corrosion resistance. And the part number is shown on your screen, along with the number of the recommended spark plug for heavy-duty use. Okay, the last upgrade we have here that covers all OptiMax products is this smaller fuse holder. All fuses are now contained within this one holder, which is located near the trim relays. Next up are product changes common to all small V6 engines. These are the 115 through 200 horsepower 2.0 and 2.5 liter carbureted EFI and OptiMax products. The mating surfaces of the exhaust extension or tuner and this adapter plate are now machined, and this improvement will help prevent extension bolts from coming loose, thereby reducing the possibility of exhaust leaks. A gasket will no longer be required. However, the gasket can only be eliminated if both the extension and the adapter plate have been upgraded. The new parts will supersede the old. Now, the exhaust divider plate surface is also being machined these days, and this improvement will help eliminate the possibility of the rough cast surface causing a leak or damaging that gasket. The machine plate will supersede the old. You can see those part numbers on your screen. Okay, next up are changes for the 135 through 200 horse 2.0 and 2.5 liter carbureted and EFI models. This new style bronze oil pump shaft bushing has replaced the previously used plastic coupler, which used a magnet. The oil pump shaft on the new version now turns within this bushing instead of the coupler turning with the shaft. If this newer style coupler is backfitted to the older engines, the oil injection motion sensor must be disconnected and that wiring must be changed as well. All right, these models also use an O-ring style head gasket this year, similar to the 3-liter head gasket. The new O-rings have raised or widened areas to hold it in place during assembly. The cylinder heads have also been modified to work with the new gaskets. One final note on this upgrade, the 135 2-liter will continue to use the standard head gasket. Now, the reed block assembly has also been upgraded on these models. The reeds themselves are now made of a new stainless steel material for increased durability. And the reed block has been upgraded to an overhung reed design. This is the old, you can see it's flat here, and on the new it's raised. This prevents the ends of the reeds from contacting the reed block, thereby reducing chipping and breakage of the reed. The final upgrade for these models is a new CDM ignition system that's similar to the 3-liter system. This new ignition system utilizes red stator technology along with the commonly used CDMs. A control module here is also used to condition the trigger signal for the CDMs. The control module also performs other engine-related functions as required on various models. Next on our list is the 2.5 liter OptiMax. We're going to begin by looking at the upgrades that are common to all three 2.5 liter OptiMax models. These would be the 115, the 135, and the 150 horsepower engines. These engines will also use the O-ring style head gasket and upgraded reed block assembly that we did mention earlier for the 2 and the 2.5 liter carbureted and EFI engines. Okay, the first upgrade we want to tell you about now is the addition of a check valve to the cylinder block oil line fitting, which is here. This is a running change for the 135 and 150 horse models and is also on the new 115 model. The check valve was added to prevent the evacuation of oil from the oil hose during certain running conditions. And along with that check valve, all fittings were changed to 90-degree elbows. An inline check valve kit is available to upgrade engines in the field. Service replacement power heads for 1998 as well as 1999 engines will have the elbow fittings and those check valves. Now, several changes have also been made to the fuel system on these 2.5 liter models. The old fuel cooler, like this one, has been replaced with a water-cooled fuel rail located here on the port side. Now, the water supply for this water-cooled rail and the air compressor, by the way, is picked up off a strainer fitting on the adapter plate, also located here on the port side. Water is then routed through the port side fuel rail, through the air compressor, and to the telltale. The fuel hose routing between the VST and the fuel rails has also been changed. The fuel hoses to the fuel rails are now routed in the lower cowl area on the starboard side. Previously, they ran to the top of the engine by the flywheel cover. The return fuel hose to the VST is also routed in the lower cowl area, but it's located here on the port side. The fuel injectors have also been upgraded on these models. Fuel injector flow has been increased from 2.5 grams to 3.1 grams per second. The new injectors are black in color to distinguish them from the previously used blue color injectors. The increased fuel flow was needed for better power output from the 150. Now, the new injectors will not backfit because of calibration changes. More information about the newly calibrated ECMs and throttle cams is available in the product update manual. One more thing, a black water pressure sensor has also been added to these models. That new sensor is located here on the ignition coil plate at the rear of the engine. A lack of water pressure will set off a warning light as well as a horn and also put the engine into power reduction. The water strainer for the water-cooled fuel rail and air compressor has also been relocated from the exhaust divider to the adapter plate below the power head. And the strainer itself has also been changed from brass to plastic. Now we're going to take a look at the changes for all 3-liter engines. These changes affect carbureted, EFI, and OptiMax models. All 3-liter models now use the same break-in procedure as we outlined earlier for OptiMax products. And once again, you can refer to Service Advisory 99-04 for more information. Next is an upgrade for 3-liter crankshafts. Engineering has changed the heat treating process for 3-liter crankshafts in order to achieve a deeper case hardening. The increase in the depth of the case hardening will certainly increase the durability of these crankshafts. The new crankshaft will supersede the old, and the part numbers are shown on your screen. Next up are several gasket upgrades. The power head base gasket, as well as the drive shaft housing to adapter plate gasket, have both been changed to a new anti-stick material. The old material sealed well, but it made the removal of the power head and adapter plate difficult. And the old gasket material was also difficult to remove from the surfaces of those old parts. The new gaskets will supersede the old and they'll backfit. The part numbers are now on your screen. Another gasket upgrade for these models is the addition of beading to the upper water pump gasket. Now, this was done to simply improve sealing. The new gasket will again supersede and backfit, and here are the part numbers of the new and old gaskets. And finally, for all 3-liter models, we have several changes to the lower unit that will improve durability and water flow to the engine. The rear mounting stud diameter was increased from 10 millimeters to 12 millimeters to strengthen the drive shaft housing to gear housing joint. The gears in the lower unit have also been changed to a near net forging, and new style cutters and a new shot peening process have combined to increase the durability of these gears. Dual upper drive shaft housing bearings are also being used now to reduce drive shaft whip and prevent the drive shaft from dropping down at idle. Using these dual bearings will increase drive shaft as well as gear life and prevent water intrusion. And finally, to improve water flow to the power head, these lower units now have water pickups here on the front of the torpedo in addition to the standard pickups on the sides. There is more information in the product update manual about several other changes to this lower unit. Next, we want to talk about the 225 and the 250 horse 3-liter carbureted and EFI models. These engines have had several modifications in the 2000 model year to improve performance. The 3-liter carb and EFI models have new cylinder heads that provide improved performance. In addition, the exhaust port height has also been changed to improve low-end torque. This is the old, this is the new. You can see the difference. Now, the 4-throttle shutter intake system has also been added to the 225 EFI model. And along with these changes, there are new ECM and carburetor calibrations. More information is available in the Outboard 2000 product update manual. We also need to mention here that these changes will not backfit to previous models. All right, next in line are changes for the 3-liter OptiMax. The oil pump on 3-liter OptiMaxes has been moved to the starboard side of the air plenum facing rearward. Now, the oil hoses run to the check valves that we mentioned earlier here in the sides of the reed block adapter plate. The machined oil grooves that were in the adapter plate have been replaced now with drilled passages. Return oil from the air compressor now provides additional lubrication to the main bearings. The fitting on the air compressor oil return hose here now has a check valve to keep oil flowing to the main bearings. Oil that puddles in a reed block area is now directed to the cylinder bore at idle. Bottom line, this new oiling design will increase bore lubrication and help cool the piston while the engine is at idle. Now, several items have also been relocated or rerouted here on the 3-liter OptiMaxes. The fuel rail excess air discharge right here has been moved from the exhaust flow path in the power head adapter to the air plenum. This change will improve durability and reduce the number of fittings and the length of hose previously required. The fuel and air regulators here on the port side fuel rail have now been reversed. They are opposite the 1998 and 1999 models. The fuel regulator is here at the bottom, the air regulator is at the top. This change improves the fuel return hose routing. And the engine wiring harness itself also has a new look. The harness is now routed from the bottom of the power head upward inside the fuel rails to the injectors. This will help prevent possible shipping damage to the injectors. Okay, finally, for the 3-liter OptiMaxes, we have several upgrades that deal with the power head. The piston ring grooves have been redesigned for better sealing against carbon buildup. And the piston ring anti-rotation pin here on the 3-liter OptiMax has also been redesigned to match that of the 2.5-liter OptiMax. And the piston rings themselves have also been improved for increased durability during the break-in period. And in addition to the piston and ring upgrades, cylinder porting has also been changed to increase horsepower. Well, that's going to wrap things up for us on this program. Remember to refer to the Outboard 2000 Product Update Manual and to the appropriate service bulletins and advisories for more information on product changes. We'll be sure and see you next time.